this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got two M&P 9mm pistols on the table. One is the original and one is the M2.0. I'm going to make a short video today to show you the differences between them. We recently acquired this M2.0 and our friends over at Guns Galore lent us this original so we could do this video and show the differences between the two. So I'm going to start out by showing the most minor difference and then get into actually some of the differences on the pistol. The original one comes in a blue box and the new one comes in a black box. So that's probably about the most insignificant difference, but if you're in the store you can probably spot them very easily by the difference in the color of the boxes. So now let's get into the stuff that actually matters, because we all know that we get them home, we take them out of the box, put the box in the closet, and then put the gun in the safe and go from there. So I'm going to start with making sure that both of these guns are unloaded. So we do have two unloaded firearms. And you may notice some blue tape on the bottom of one of the magazines. The magazines are so identical, they're the same mag. This is simply to differentiate the mags from the 2.0 that we purchased from the one that we borrowed, so I don't mix the mags up. But the mags are actually interchangeable. They're both 17 round mags, both guns. Both guns come with two magazines. And when we hit it at the range, we actually swapped the mags, and they function flawlessly. So that's one thing that Smith & Wesson has done well, that between the generations they didn't change the mags. So if you've got a collection of M&P mags, they'll work. A few of the other differences that you'll notice are the texture. The 2.0 has a very sandpapery texture, similar to like the grip tape and some of those other ones. And it's pretty aggressive. It is comfortable to hold, but when you've got your hand clamped down in this gun, it's not going anywhere. And the original one has some texture, but it's very smooth and just kind of flush with the plastic. You're still going to get a good grip on it because it's got a full-size grip. There's a lot of gun to hold on to, but it's actually kind of slippery and it'll easily move up and down in your hand. Whereas the sandpapery one, it's almost impossible to move the gun in your hand. So significantly more grip on this one. I wouldn't want that brushing up against my side or something like that. If I were carrying this concealed, I'd probably want to have a t-shirt or something between, keeping it off my body. But it doesn't hurt your hands when you're at the range. One of the other differences is the back straps. The original one does come with interchangeable back straps, one on the gun and then two of them. It comes with a small, medium, and large, and they've got that same relatively gentle texture that the gun has. The newer one comes with three. A small, a medium large, and a large. The medium happens to be on the gun at the moment, and the two larger ones come with kind of like a beaver tail extension. And that beaver tail extension is present on the original large grip as well. So you do get an extra back strap, and yeah, and I misspoke. It comes with the original comes with three, the new one comes with four, including the one that came pre-mounted on the gun. They both have a Picatinny rail. You can see it here, and you can see it on the one that's laying on the table. The newer one has this little cutout here, and this is to show off the steel reinforcement that's in the front part of the gun. And it's present on both sides. And on the other side there's a barcode for the, like an armory that's wanting to keep track of them. You can scan the QR code. But these little cutouts, I'm not aware of them performing any other purpose other than showing off the little metal plate that's in there for reinforcement. The texturing on the slides is different. At the rear they're identical, that fish scale that's real aggressive. It's really easy to get a hold of, but it doesn't tear your hand up. What is different is you have serrations at the front. So if you want to do a press check, you can do a press check with that. Now there is kind of a flare in the body here, so if you try to do it this way and really cycle the gun with it, there's a likelihood that this is going to press your fingers apart and cause them to pop off. But most people use the front serrations just for press check. So the 2.0 has that and the original one doesn't. The original one does have a bit of a concave which you can catch, but you'll notice you're getting your fingers awful close to the muzzle. That concave is present on this one in addition to the serrations. The sights are identical. Pretty nice 3-dot sights, real easy to see at the range and real clear. Both of them do have ambidextrous slide release. And they have only reversible magazine catch, so it's not ambidextrous, but it is reversible. And what I'm finding is that the majority of the parts are the same part. maybe cosmetically different, but overall the same part. I can't swear to it that all the parts are interchangeable. I know the magazines are. The fire control groups are different, and looking at some of the companies that do aftermarket triggers for them, you know, they call out which of their parts will and won't work in the different guns. So, and I'll show you when I get it apart, there's some differences in the fire control group, so there's not going to be a full interchangeability there. The rest of the parts look like they're pretty much off the same parts bin. A couple minor differences that I'll show you in the slide stops. One difference is in the slide, the notch for the slide stop is kind of like a truncated moon on the newer one, on the 2.0, and it's a long slot on the original one. And I really don't know of any real functional difference that that specific little detail has, because the slide stop just catches on the one end of it. But if you look at the difference, if you look at the slide stop on this one versus the 2.0, you'll see there's this extra part. And what this extra part does is locks the slide stop up. On the M&Ps, if you slammed a full magazine into the gun when it was locked back, it would close, go into battery and be ready to fire. The 2.0 will not do that. This little extra piece prevents that from happening. You know, some people will look at that as, you know, a good feature, the ability to slam the magazine in, goes into battery and continue on for a tactical reload or in the middle of a firefight. Other people looked at it as a safety risk. Of course, the lawyers got involved and the safety risk side won, so you have this little piece that prevents that, and I'll show you when I get it apart how that works. That may or may not be something that you could remove if it annoys you, but that is one definite difference. So let me take the two guns apart. They both come apart identically. They both have that weird either see or disconnect lever that you can push down, or you can pull the triggers. So I'm going to pause the video and get the two guns apart and then pick up where we left off. Okay, so I've got the guns all apart. The 2.0 is on my left and the original is on my right, and I'm just going to go through the parts, show you what's different, what's not, and go step by step. We'll start with the recoil guide rod assemblies. They appear to be identical. They're both steel, they're both a wafer type spring, and they both got the blue paint to indicate probably the weight of the spring to differentiate between this and let's say the 45. The barrels are almost identical. Look at the top, look at the sides, the locking lugs. It's the same blank. The one thing that is different between them is the feed ramp. If I get them turned the right way. You'll notice the feed ramp on the original is relatively narrow, and there's a shoulder on each side. Tilt it up a little bit. So when I rock it back and forth, you can see the shoulder and the feed ramp is rather narrow. On the 2.0, they've gotten rid of the shoulder and flared the entire feed ramp out. In theory, that would improve reliability and reduce the likelihood of a round hanging up on the ramp if something wasn't just quite right. So that, I think, is likely a performance improvement or a reliability improvement between the two guns. Other than that, the barrels do appear to be identical. When we look at the slides, and again I got the 2.0 on my left hand and the original on my right hand, when you look at them, they appear to be basically identical. There's a few different machining cuts that are slightly different. If you look up at the front, how they've machined the lightning cuts are slightly different, but that's probably just going to relate to minor differences caused by the weight difference from the cutting in the serrations. The only other difference, of course, is this cutout for the slide stop. Other than that, the slides appear to be identical, and I would suspect that they would probably mount and function. You might have some differences in ammo sensitivity if you reverse them due to the cuts, but overall they really didn't change much in the slide. Set those aside, and let's look at the frames. We got the 2.0 on my left hand and the original on my right hand. One of the things you're going to notice right away are the front guides. The front guides are significantly more robust. They're from here all the way back to here on the 2.0. And they're small guides similar to Glock and a few of the others on the original one. So it's a much more robust locking block. At the back, they're mostly the same. You'll see the guides are very similar on both of them, but there's a couple notches and cuts that are different in the 2.0 on my left here when you get back into the fire control group. And that's going to relate to the differences in the triggers. So there's going to be not a full parts compatibility between these two pieces. And I don't think any of these things are going to be overall reliability differences like the front would be. They're just going to allow for the trigger to be a little different. The other thing I was talking about is on the slide stop. On the original one, if I lift up on the slide stop and let go, a spring automatically returns it. So when I slam the magazine in and it hit, that would be sufficient to close it and have it go into battery. On the newer one, if I push it up, it sticks. And it's that little clip right there that's holding it. Now I can push it down, it'll go down, but it takes force. So that is one difference between the two for that additional dubious safety feature. Other than that, they're basically the same. They use the same takedown mechanism. The 2.0 seems to be a little bit looser. Seems not to have any retention or tension on it when it's disassembled, whereas this one has a minimal amount of tension. The only thing that this can do is it's easy if you're playing around with it, cleaning it, to do this, and then when you try to go put it back together again, it may not go back together. You may have to hold it with your finger. A minor annoyance, but not, a significant difference that's going to affect the overall reliability of the gun. And then of course you have the differences that I showed you in the grips. So there's quite a few minor differences. None of them are real significant, with the exception potentially of this really improving the reliability of the front slide guides. But overall, it's basically the same frame with a tweak here and there. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble them, talk about the trigger a little bit, and wrap this thing up. Let's talk about the triggers for the last thing that I want to talk about. They've definitely improved the trigger on the 2.0 over the original. The trigger on this one, when I measured it, came in about 7 pounds 10 ounces, or 4 ounces. When I measured this one, it came in 5 pounds 10 ounces, and I did have one outlier that probably skewed that a little bit. It's probably closer to 5 pounds 8 ounces, or 5.5 pounds, which puts it consistent with the Glocks and many of the others on the market. We did find at the range it was a little bit easier to get reliable shots on target with this one because you were less likely to pull your grip as you were pulling the trigger. So I'm going to do this one first, and there's a magazine in it. It's loaded with snap caps, inert dummy rounds to protect the firing pin. You can dry fire Smith & Wessons, but we don't own this gun, and we do have a policy of not dry firing guns that we don't own, so I've got the snap caps in it. So I'm going to show you the trigger on this. Here's your take-up. You hear it's kind of crunchy and all sorts of noises and stuff going on in there. And you can feel it too. As you're pulling it back, it feels crunchy. You get back here to the wall, and I'm increasing pressure, more pressure, more pressure, more pressure, and then it breaks. So it's got kind of a heavy feeling wall, and this ever increasing amount of pressure you're putting on it before it breaks. From a reset perspective, the reset's almost about halfway out with a little bit of bounce, and then kind of a gritty feeling take up, and you're back on the wall, and then it breaks. Now if I go to this one, this gun we own, and because you can dry fire Smith & Wessons, I'm not going to worry about the snap caps. There's a little bit of that noise, but it's a lot quieter and it feels smoother. It doesn't feel as gritty as you're doing the take-up. It has that same hinge trigger. And then as I get to the wall, as I'm pulling it back, it creeps just a little bit, but there's a lot less pressure buildup feeling, and then a sharp, crisp break. Take-up's the reset's about the same, not quite halfway out. And then I'm going to do it again so I can show you the reset. There's a little bit of bounce, and then a little bit more take-up, you're back on the wall, and then again a little bit of creep in the break. Now normally you would think that creep in a trigger is bad, but in this case it's very smooth creep, and losing 1.5 pounds or more of weight, overall it made it much easier to get a nice clean shot. Still a little bit noisy, but not quite as noisy as the other one. Now we're probably going to put an apex trigger in this gun just to see how well that does. But with the originals, pretty much that's what everybody did. You bought the gun, you put an apex trigger on it before you even fired it sometimes. It was like on the list of things to do, kind of like doing the polish job on a Glock. And that may not be something that's necessary on this one. You might like the trigger just the way it is. We will do a follow-up when we put the apex trigger in this. I know the people that put them in the originals do like those triggers. So overall, I just wanted to go over a few of the differences between the two guns. So if you're trying to make a decision on buying one of these from the beginning, you don't have either and you're looking at buying one, it's probably worth the extra $50 or more that you may pay for the 2.0 over trying to find one of the originals or buying it on sale. If you've got an original and it's working well and it's serving you well, there's really no good reason to dump it and buy the 2.0. Most of the features that you could get on the 2.0 you can get on the aftermarket. You can do that to your gun a lot less expensively than taking the hit, selling it, and buying a new one. If you got one that's end of life, or again, if you're trying to decide which one you're going to buy initially, I would definitely drive towards the 2.0. One thing I'd almost forgotten to point out to you, if I go to the original gun, you'll see there's a little pin on the bottom, a little nub on the bottom of the trigger, and a little nub back here on the bottom of the frame that acts as an over travel stop. So the trigger hits it and it stops the over travel. On the newer one, that nub is still on the trigger, but the over travel stop has been moved up to the top. And I'm not really sure the rationale behind that, because at least when it was at the bottom, it's not creating a torque on the trigger, whereas I'm pulling now, I'm putting all the force, almost like trying to bend the trigger arm. Not really sure why they made that change. It's a nuance. I don't think it overall makes a significant difference in function, but it's just kind of strange that apparently they didn't change the trigger blade when they made that one change. So, thank you Guns Galore for loaning us this original gun. I'll take it back to them, and it'll be available in their used case if you're in Central Florida area and you're looking for one of the originals. If you're looking for a 2.0, they have those as well. They're actually becoming readily available at this point. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, check us out on Facebook, and have a great day. Thank you.